Welcome to the Up in Your Family Business podcast, where we dive into the heart of family business with intimate interviews, expert insights, inspirational stories, valuable resources, and practical tips to help grow your family business. Welcome back. I say welcome back because this is part 2 of a 2-part series. If right now you are tuning in right now at the first time you have not watched part 1, I recommend you stop here and go back and listen to part 1. And the reason I say that is because in the first one, not only would you have missed the first 8 points of passion, but also got more of an in-depth introduction to who Jake Burgess, our guest, is. Jake, by the way, thanks for coming back again. Appreciate it very much. Yeah. I thought it'd be fun for us just to kind of have a part 1, step away, come back a week later, and have a little bit more energy. Because I tell you what, we covered a lot last time.
We did.
We covered a lot. So thanks for coming back.
Absolutely.
So if you want to learn more about Jake Burgess, and you want to learn more about the Burgess Restaurant Group, in terms of the 5 restaurants that he has, which I will state real quickly again: The Den by Fox Garden in Carmel, Fox Garden Family Kitchen in Fishers, Fox Garden Kitchen and Ale in Fortville, Smokey's Concession Stand in Lapel, and Bongi's Tavern in Perkinsville. I recommend you go back because not only can you learn more about who Jake is, learn more about his restaurants, but also learn about the history, what led to this, and most importantly, what was the origin of the points of passion? Why did you create them? So go ahead and just stop right there, stop right here, go back, watch part 1, and then come visit us. Okay?
Full circle.
Yeah, full circle. So, okay. So with that, I'm Todd Reimer. I am the host of this podcast, co-owner of Element 212, and I am with Jake Burgess from the Burgess Restaurant Group. And we are going to jump right in to the next 9 points of passion.
Love it.
Okay. So starting with number 9 is building relationships. It sounds pretty simple, but tell us what building relationships means as a point of passion.
I hate that every time that I start explaining one of these, I have to say like in my industry, but I'll try to get better at that. But I relate it very, very intently on what we do and what tricks of the trade that we use. But, like we've talked about in the past, that, I feel like these are, you can run these in any industry. Building relationships for us, as you look at them, we take a guest to a regular to a VIP, and a VIP to a friend. Our motto is that I don't have customers. We have guests. We invite you in. You're invited into our place of the restaurant, And so to be a guest, I feel like we treat you as if a lot of industries or a lot of restaurants will call them customers, which is fine. I mean, that's great, but I really try to have a guest. None of my pet peeves is calling a guest a customer. And so we take that, from the first time you come in, where can we act different? We'll take a guest, have something they like, something they enjoy. If we get to see them again, we remember them. We remember what they drink, how they drink it, what they like. I know that when I go to restaurants, I like specifically maybe a certain seat or a certain bar stool or, whatever that entails. And we start to kind of really try to find those ideas. We've got systems in place that we have nightly recaps, we have weekly projections, we have, all these things. And so communicatively, we are all on the same page. Hey, you see this guy come in, you see this girl come in, this is what they like, this is how they like it, this is what they enjoy. Next thing you know, they start coming in twice a week, 3 times a week. Now they start coming in, they start bringing friends, telling people about it. Now they're VIP. Now they get what they want. Hey, I got to do a menu tasting today. You want to try this? Hey, I know you like trout. We got trout in tonight. We'll send you a text. We'll tell you what the specials are.
Really?
We'll start to do some things where we're building those relationships, and then hopefully we turn you into a VIP. And then a VIP, we have so many people that we've taken down this road that are now friends of not only the restaurant but of specific and servers. I can't tell you how many times throughout the summer we'll get a call from somebody that's like, hey, bring the staff over, we got the pool open, we're doing cookout, we're doing this, we're doing that, and now they're friends. And we really kind of garner those relationships. But it doesn't happen overnight. It takes the full staff to really kind of dive in and really believe in building these people up, but it pays dividends. And what we do in the restaurant industry, a lot of times these people are paying your bills. You have, Todd comes in and Todd likes Jake. Well, I want you to sit in my section because Todd tips well, or Todd does this, or Todd, and we become buddies and we become this. Well, next thing you know, like you're bringing people in to showcase not only the restaurant but me. And so those where the building the relationships are. And each server, bartender, they have specific relationships that they've built, but in the grand scheme of things, these relationships they built, they're fans of the restaurant. I've got people that come in 3 times a week that live out by Conner Prairie. They probably pass 55 restaurants 3 days a week to come see us. And they bypass them all. They go by every single one of them, but they sit at seat 13, 14 at the bar. 3 days a week. By the time they come in, they've got their personalized glasses and they know what they drink, and we introduce them, and we do cool things for them, and they are now friends of ours. When the first time they came in, they were just a one-off. They were just a reg guest. They were just their first time, and so we have to collectively do all these things to build these relationships.
That's really interesting. How does not to put pressure on you here, but in the first interview we talked about customized service.
Yeah.
How does building relationships, is that an extension of customized? They sound like they're kissing cousins.
Absolutely.
Building relationships and customized service. How do those two tie together?
For sure. It's funny that you bring that up. And as you've heard me say in the first one, and you'll hear me continue, that they all go into one another. So for sure, some talk to each other more than the other. But I can think of 1,000 experiences or examples of, man, we took this person to being a first-time guest to being a lifelong friend, and that's been us building a relationship, but collectively all building relationships. And yeah, customized service absolutely goes into it. I mean, I can't tell you how many times that I go to specific bars because the way that they pour my drink, or the glassware they use, or the bartender there, or the server, whatever that is, whatever it is. And so they all do kind of talk to each other, but yeah, building relationships is definitely important, especially in our industry, but all industries, but in a business where our servers make $2.13 an hour, they are dependent on the people that come in and sit in their sections. And so if you can build those relationships and you got a slow night, there's thousands of times where, I'll tell a server like, hey, why don't you call them up? Hey, tell them you're serving tonight.
Really?
Where it's like, if you're sitting at home, you're probably going to eat tonight somewhere, whether it's at home or whether it's at a restaurant. And I know that I don't have money on the books. Call them up, have them come in. I'll buy you a drink. Hell yeah. I wasn't going to have this business if you weren't here. What's it cost me to come in and buy you an appetizer? Well, they don't know necessarily why we invited them in or why we called them in. They just know they got a personalized phone call. And they said, hey, come in, have dinner tonight. We'd love to buy you an appetizer. That happens all the time. So that's building relationships. It goes both ways, where they feel the love and they feel the community, but at the same time, it helps us on nights where, as somebody who's dependent on tips, an extra 30, 40, 50 bucks sometimes makes the night.
It's a big deal.
So
no, I love that.
There's value in it.
So you actually have team members who will call a guest.
I've got one girl who sends out a group message on her slow nights, and she'll send it out to 20, 30 people.
And they know her that well that they're fine getting that.
And our servers have business cards. Every server in our restaurant has a business card.
I like that.
So by the end of the meal, a lot of times our servers, I like to ask them to, hey, trade business cards with somebody. Hey, you guys mind trading business cards? Well, next thing you know, I can send them a thank you note, or I can send them, an email, or whatever that means. But at the same time, and we don't want to cross that boundary of being the weirdo, being like, hey, let me just text you. But at the same time, I've got a lady, like I said, that she's got that's good a relationship with people that she will just send out messages, group messages, individual messages, and says, hey, come on in, we got plenty of space tonight. If she gets 3 of the 30, like still 3 of the 30, So, it really pays dividends to not only us, but as one of the teammates too.
That's really cool. I mean, it makes me. I have a question for you. Yeah. I'd like to know your professional opinion. Do you think more people come in for the food or the experience?
I think the shift has really shifted in the last, 5 or so years.
The shifting of the shifts?
The shifting of the shifts. I mean, 5 years ago, it was, this chef is doing this, or this person's doing this, or this style of cuisine. But I can't tell you how many times I've heard in the last probably week alone that people have specifically talk to me about the experience, or we like our server, or we like the experience, we like the atmosphere. You know, you can get
the atmosphere was the other component,
in
right?
Theory, you should get good food, at least comparable food. You know, if you're paying $10 for it here and $20 for it here, in theory, it should be better at the $20 place. But sometimes you want the $10, whatever that may be. So, you know, you're going to get food wherever experience, service, and that sort of stuff really kind of is the deciding factor anymore. I think in a lot of restaurants, we're like, "Did I couldn't get service there? Why would I go back?" You know, it just leaves that bad taste in your mouth.
Okay. The other thing you kind of poking fun at yourself because you always say in our industry. Well, you are speaking about your industry.
Yeah.
However, and I think we always think about some of the, you know, a lot of what we're talking about. I guess you could lump into service or hospitality, and we often do think about, you know, venues, hotels, restaurants. However, and that's fine. You can continue to say in our industry. But here's the thing. The reason I wanted to have you on as a guest is because I wasn't thinking, man, I'd really love to have Jake Burgess on so all of my listeners who own a restaurant can really benefit from him. As we close out the points of passion, I'm going to have a couple of questions for you directly related to how this could be applied elsewhere. But before we get there, I just wanted to point out, I'm really continue to say in our industry, it's fine. But I think all the things that you're sharing today, the reason why I thought you'd be a great guest and it'd be great for our listeners to hear from is because this can be applied just about everywhere. We're dealing with people. The experience is so important. People remember these types of things. It's in the details, right? It's in those little things. So I think this is great. So I think it's not just in your industry.
I'll get better at it.
Right, but that's all you can speak to. I mean, that's your world. But I think this is relevant to all kinds of industries. So I love it. I love it. So, but we'll get to that here in a little bit. All right, let's move on to the 10th point of passion. Follow the recipe. Number one, I love that because I don't know if is that a play on words or is that okay? I love it.
Yeah, definitely follow the recipe. I think in the you know, follow the recipe. You know, what's that mean? You know, is the soup the same every time, every table every time? You know, they all kind of like you said last time, they kind of talk to one another. But follow the recipe. We've worked in this long enough to know what works and what doesn't work, and I've got the blueprint onto how to make it work. You know, it is that 60-second water or that 60-second table greet. That is that manager stopping by the table. That is, you know, the glassware we use. You know, I can go on 1,000 different ways, but follow the recipe. That goes from the kitchen to the front of house too. This works, and I promise it works. You know, if you do what I ask you to do, it's going to work. So just follow the recipe. You might have a way to do it, and that's fine. Put your flair on it, but I want you to follow the recipe, and especially in the kitchen where, you know, every table every time goes into play. Where, you know, I don't want you to come in on Tuesday and Thursday and have the hamburger in it. They're two different things, you know, so that also goes into follow the recipe where this is a great burger, just cook it the way that I ordered it, or cook the way it should be. And then, you know, follow the recipe on the front of house too, where this works. I know it works, you know. You know, we've got costs to hit, we've got expectations to hold 1% less than new standard, but then at the same time, everybody in this industry or everybody that comes into a restaurant is an expert. You know, they go online and they have a platform where they can talk about their experience, whether it was good and where it's bad. But if you follow the recipe, it's going to be good, you know. And so I just want you to lean in a little bit. I want you to believe in what we do because you have such a high turnover sometimes. Fortunately, right now, we don't, and we've been pretty consistent on not having turnover. But people come in that work at 10 different places a lot of times, you know, and they pick something they learned at this restaurant. They pick something they learned at this restaurant. Well, that's not how we do it. That's not our recipe. So follow our recipe. Follow the recipe. So take your tricks of the trade, but do it the way we want it done. You know, I can think of things that people come in and there's always pushback. You know, there's always pushback because they know better, and then once you break it down into a relatable state or a relatable instance, then and they do it our way, you know, call it what you want, but they follow the recipe, and they see their tips go up, or they see their shifts change, or they see, you know, the benefits of following the recipe. fall in line. And so, they all talk to one another, but that's definitely follow the recipe. Definitely is because follow the systems. These systems are put in place because they work. And if they don't, then we change the system,
Yeah.
It's easier to change a system than change a symptom, so... I worked for a master chef. I think I told you a little bit, but there's 52 master chefs in the world, and
52.
Yeah, it's the hardest thing ever. I mean, if you look up what a CMC, a certified master chef, what it takes to be, it's harder than to be a doctor. But he came in one day. I was working with him, and he was sick, and I was like, "Dude, I got some Dayquil over here," and he was like, "Oh no," and he's making a honey ginger cayenne tea or something. And I was like, "What's that?" He's like, "Well, I need to boost my immune system so that it fights this whatever I have off. If I take the Dayquil, it's just going to make me feel good for now. I need my immune system to be better, so I need to fix the problem, not the symptom." And that really kind of spoke to me in a lot of ways, where it's like, sure, I can go and fix this symptom right now, but I'm not fixing the problem. And so in our industry, it's really easy for us to change a system that says, "Oh, this does," just because it doesn't work once doesn't mean it's not right. But,
right.
But if it's continually a problem, I can just follow the recipe. I can change the recipe. So that's kind of what that means to me and where that kind of came from.
Well, I love the play on words.
Yeah.
I love puns, play on words, dad jokes.
Absolutely.
We'll actually have a dad joke here in a little bit.
Good.
I just want to read what you have here because I love it. It's not your way. The way you have it spelled out here on your description is, it's not your way or another place's way. It's the Fox Garden way. I just love that. This is our brand. Yeah. This is our blueprint, our system, whatever you want to call it. Yeah. This is the way it's done. Yeah. Doesn't mean there's not flexibility in there. It doesn't mean you can't improve it.
Right.
But this is kind of how we do it, because you do want consistency, right? You do want. It's okay to be predictable.
Yeah. Exclusivity a little bit too, where it's our way to do it. Like I said, you've worked at 10 restaurants. Maybe there's a reason why you've worked at 10 restaurants. You either haven't found a home or you haven't been able to do this. And if I can kind of challenge you to do it our way, then you're more bought in, And you always have the tricks of the trade of where you came from. But when you see the benefits of doing it our way, usually they kind of buy in a little bit more. And then they're more engaged, and then building relationships happen. All these things kind of happen when they buy in and buy in to follow the recipe. So
do you think your guests? Do you think, as a general rule, people appreciate and value consistency, predictability? They feel comfort in, I go in with this expectation, I get exactly what I'm looking for. That's good for them.
Yeah. I think that as we go on, maybe the last point of passion on here kind of maybe contradicts that a little bit, but at the same time, for sure. I mean,
good versus great, maybe.
Well, let's see here. They weren't ready for us.
They weren't ready. Okay,
yeah.
All right.
So that's
we'll
one
get there.
Where that's something that kind of builds into a lot of the other things. But yeah, I mean, if you know what you're getting when by the time you sit down or by the time you walk in the door, then that's a good thing. And at the same time, you know that you can bring friends too, where you're like, this place is awesome. I had a great time here. The service is great. The food's awesome. The atmosphere is great. As opposed to going to a place where, I had a pretty good time here a couple times and a really bad time a few times. Like, you don't know what you're getting into. If you know what you're getting into, it really gives, you want to bring your in-laws out or your friends out or, a date sometimes, where you're like, dude, I had a great lunch here. I'm going to bring my
talked about that in the first part. Yeah. Yes, that's right. That's right.
So it just allows you to be more understanding of what's getting ready to happen.
Okay. Very cool. All right, let's move on to the next one. I think this word speaks for itself, but I like to hear how it's applied, how you apply it. Integrity.
Yeah.
Integrity is big. We all have to have integrity, right?
Absolutely.
So tell me how integrity applies to Fox Garden brand and how it applies to the way you guys do your business.
Yeah, I mean, integrity is something that, it's not taught. I don't think it's necessarily taught. I think it's kind of ingrained in you with experiences and that sort of stuff. It's not a lot of the attaboy kind of stuff where you're like, you did a great job. It's just kind of just, who you are. Can you, be honest? Things you do when nobody's watching. There's trash on the floor. There's, something wrong. Like, nobody's going to be like, hey, great job. Hey, thanks for picking that. It's just, you just do it,
It's the right thing to do.
Yeah, on the very, very, very basic things of integrity. Those are kind of my instances to talk, on a very plateaued, or very, very, very low level. But I think that, if you don't have integrity, then you can't really use the rest of the stuff. And if you don't have integrity, it's really hard to be a part of a team, or be a part of our team at least, even, where that's such a invaluable thing, where I can't come at you I can't manage you if I don't have integrity, or I mean, it's something that is not a word that's just thrown around. You really want to believe in it. You want people around you to believe in it too, where there's a lot of times where you are on an island, or you're not managed, or you don't, hey, I need you to go run the bar tonight, or hey, I need you to go do this. It's really easy to give a free drink away. It's really easy to discount something because you're going to get a tip. It's really easy to do this sort of stuff. So if you have integrity and you have that sort of stuff, you have a backbone and spine to say, like, hey, I know you're my best friend, I know you're my buddy, or I know you're whatever. Come in, you want to eat and drink, but you're going to pay full price. Now there's a way around that too. Hey, come talk to the manager, come talk to somebody who says, hey, these are my best friends. They drove in from Columbus, Indiana. What can we do for them? Hell, I'd love to buy them a round of drinks and an appetizer and a drink, or that sort of stuff, but I want to know about it. I don't want you to take it in your hands. And so I think there's a lot of opportunity to, play both sides of the fence on that, but at the same time, that if you're a good, honest person, that, I can go and grow with you.
It's like you always hear those stories about teenagers working at the movie theater, always letting their best friends in the side door. Yeah. There's no integrity in that, for sure.
I don't drink a lot of soda, but I was driving up to Chicago, and this is just a really dumb story, but I was driving to Chicago, and I was like, you know what, I'm by myself, I got a 3.5-hour drive, I just want a Coca-Cola, so I stopped at a gas station and got a fountain Coke, and I went up to the kid, and he was probably first job, 16, 17 years old. I put it on the counter, he's like, is that it? I'm like, yeah. He goes, just take it, man, I got you. And I stopped and was like, no, you don't. You don't have me. Whoever owns this business just bought me that. And he just kind of looked at me, and I was like, gave him like a whole lesson on like, dude, don't give stuff away. I have my money out. I'm ready to pay. Like, just because it's easier for you to give it to me than ring in $1.19, whatever the Coke price was, it's way easier just to give it to me. Like, it's not yours to give away. And he kind of looked at me, and I put like $5 on the counter. I was like, here you go, dude. And he's like,
that's crazy.
But it's one of those things. Like, yeah, it's really easy to give stuff away, and a lot of times we have issues. If you haven't, I'd love to buy you a drink or an entree, whatever it is. But it's funny when I go to other places and I'll hear the bartender, somebody be like, "I got you." It's like, oh, you're gonna pull out of your wallet?
You have them.
You're gonna pull out of your wallet a drink?
Right? Yeah.
Then I've said that to my servers. They're like, well, and I'm like, no. You said you got them. Like, I paid for that twice. I paid for it when it came in the door, and I paid for it when you gave it to the guy. So
good point.
Where they kind of like, like I get it, building relationships for sure, but giving it away on your own free will is a different kind of integrity-esque conversation. So, and it's a fine line. There's some people that I do believe in and trust, and there's some people that needs to be a little more engaged with what expectations are.
Yeah, trust has to be earned.
Absolutely.
And of course, you trust until you have a reason not to.
Yeah,
that whole thing.
And sometimes I trust too easily or too soon, and it's bit me in the back.
I think a lot of leaders make that mistake.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, we want to trust, and we want people to feel like they're trusted.
For sure.
But I also think
some people take advantage of you.
I think there still has. There's still accountability.
Yeah.
You have to be reminded that sometimes it's like you want to trust your team, you want to believe in your team, but you can't just sit back and go, "They got this."
Right.
When was the last time you really held your team members accountable? It's been years. We just have a trustworthy.
Right.
But I think we're all guilty. I know I've been guilty of that. Now, it's important to point out dumb stories are encouraged on this podcast, by the way.
Okay, good. Yeah, well, I got plenty of dumb stories.
Smart stories, dumb stories.
Okay,
it's all good. Just so you know. Okay.
Love it.
I do love the word integrity. I'm glad you have that in there. It's a word that is like, it seems like it's obvious. Like sometimes it's so obvious you shouldn't have it in there.
Yeah.
But it's good you have it in there.
Yeah. Well, you can always go back to it. It's one of those.
Yeah. Well, you didn't have the integrity on your points of passion.
Yeah.
I mean, it's tough. You can't have everything on here.
Yeah, exactly.
But you definitely want integrity.
Yeah.
Okay. I like this next one. We all talk about doing things right the first time, and it costs more to do it the wrong way. So I like the way you worded this. Twice as long to do it wrong.
Yeah.
Good job on that.
Yeah, that was actually that's a theft. I've taken this one, and kind of how it came into me was from the Troy, the guy that we talked about on the first episode. That he's such a mentor, and we were going to open restaurants. Kind of fell through, but this is one that kind of comes directly from him that I've kind of put into mine. But his story is that he was always his mom would go to the grocery store and she'd be like, "Hey, you mind sweeping the house or the living room before I come home?" And he'd sit around and watch TV until she got pull the driveway, he'd pull out the sweeper, and she'd come in and be like, "Just do it again. Do it right. If you done it right the first, you got to redo this whole house now because you half-assed it, or you faked it, And so he'd have to get up and sweep the house. It took him 25 minutes to get it. It would have taken 20, And so twice as long to do it wrong is where that, where his like little probably childhood grow up story comes from. But what it means to us is a lot of times is proactive versus reactive. Twice as long to do it wrong. Condense your steps. Follow the recipe. If you don't, this is one that is really kind of fully engaged with everything. There's a few on there that mean what it means, but they really all kind of play into this one specifically where, it's just twice as long to do it wrong. And time is so valuable in what we do where, if I overcook a steak or undercook a steak or whatever, and I got to redo it, well, you're the only one at the table without food. Gosh, that is just an embarrassing thing to have, Now it happens where, we missed it from either the way the order was taken or the way that it was cooked. But I want to make sure that you're at a 4 top or sometimes a 12 top where, everybody else at the table is eating and you don't have food in front of you. You just feel bad. You almost feel bad that everybody's done with their food and, that sort of stuff. So that's a quick example, but, it goes into, it plays on a lot of things from ordering food to menu preparation to plate ordering to presentation. I mean, there's 1,000 things that thing comes into play on. But where it comes from was Troy as a kid growing up tried to get one over on his mom by sweeping the front yard or sweep for the living room.
Saying he did it well, but he really didn't.
Yeah, well, will you sweep the living room? When she left, if he'd have just spent 10 minutes watching this TV, sweeping the living room, as opposed to, oh man, she's in the driveway. Let's do it real quick. Let's do it right the first time.
I hate rework.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh my gosh,
100%.
I hate it.
Yeah.
Rework drives me crazy.
Yeah.
I don't use the word pet peeve, but if I did, that'd be my pet peeve. Oh, I just used it. Dang it.
There you go.
No, I hate rework. It drives me crazy. I just do it right the first time. Listen, we're all guilty of doing that sometimes, but
for sure.
Just don't make it a habit.
Absolutely.
So in your industry,
there you go.
In your industry,
you said it, not me.
That's right. In your industry, just think back. What are some of the consequences, whether it be the brand, the team, the individual? What are some of the consequences of not living by that? What if you are quote unquote lazy? You cut corners. You don't go all out on it. What are some of the consequences?
Money.
Right.
That's one way that it's hard to get through a lot of times when you're trying to put some of these into place or manage people or do things. But if you can break it down into monetary instances, where it's like, say you burn 3 steaks a day, that's $60 a day. You want a raise? I can't give you a raise. The raise is in the trash can. You need a new piece of equipment for the restaurant. You need a new uniform. You need a new shirt. You need a new something. Well, you just threw it away. You overcooked that steak. You undercooked that steak. You gave that drink away. Whatever that is. And I can break it down into, think about it. I'd rather give that money to you. I'd rather give that money to you. You're just throwing it away. And so, if we're not being engaged, if we're not, being locked on, if we're not, all these things that come into play, that if we're not doing it, if you're not following the recipe, if you're not twice as long to do it wrong, it's just money that in theory should be in your pocket. As an employee or as a teammate or as a whatever, but it's also one of my bargaining tools that says you want a raise, you're costing me money, bud, and so all those things kind of get played, and if I can use it on a monetary sense, and that is, like I said, buying a piece of equipment or giving you a raise or bidding better ingredients or whatever. Well, I can't because we're just throwing it in the trash can. So
Is it how? I don't know if it applies just to this one, but how can you tell? The restaurant industry is so fast paced. There's so much. Like we talked about before we started today. I've never worked in a restaurant, but I can only imagine how chaotic it must be in the back in the kitchen.
Yeah, you kind of just put a nail or the head on the nail. Yeah, for sure. I mean, we call it organized chaos. It's an organized chaos. Everybody has, do your job, and then at the same time, it's a ballet too. I mean, you've got 5 guys on a line that couldn't fit in this room, and they got to work 5 or 6 hours together, side by side, and they've got to be putting out product. It's a fun ballet to watch, and when you got the right team, you got the right leader, and you got the right people, it's seamless. When I was at a steakhouse and when I first opened Fox, I was on the line 7 days a week, 12, 13 hours a day. That's what I was doing, and there were times where we were just incredibly busy, and you could hear a pin drop. I mean, we were just that in tune. Everybody was doing their job. Everybody was locked on. Everybody was focused. Everybody was doing their job. And at the end of the shift, it was such a rewarding experience that, man, we didn't have a single up cook. Everybody had a great time. We had a blast, and it builds camaraderie. It builds that sort of stuff. And so organized chaos, a ballet, whatever you want to call it, is kind of, I think you said exactly what it is. It's very chaotic.
So let me ask you this: if it's that chaotic and everyone's in their lane and everyone's doing their thing and such a fast pace, how is it that you're able to see when one of these points of passion is falling short? How do you see it? How do you recognize it? How does that happen?
Kind of a loaded question.
I know it is.
It's kind of a loaded question, but
I know.
I guess the short of it is that I've been doing it long enough.
Okay.
I've been doing it long enough, but I guess the real, as for somebody who is experienced, it's always a look on the face of your guest. You've seen that look. My water's empty. My steak's overcooked. There's a hair in my. You just see that eyes. You see that you're not having a good time.
So the guest is going to tell you.
The guest, you can feel the temperature of a restaurant by your guest experience. If they're cheersing and they're having fun, it's great. But you see that 3 or 4 top that is just a miserable time. It's one of two things: you're either a miserable person or you had a really bad experience. And we have them both. I mean, some people are just. Some people are just not happy to be out. It's a chore to them.
Most of the time, though,
when I go out to eat, it's an experience. I want to have fun.
Yeah.
I'm there to spend money to not only feed myself and who I'm with, but also to pay for this experience, pay for the service, pay for the atmosphere, pay for the food. But you can tell with somebody's eyes, you can tell with just how they are doing. And then you start to go back and look, all right, how long does their food take? Was it cooked properly? Were they sat on time? Did they, then you can kind of start going back through and follow the recipe. You go back through and check the systems. You go back through and, do all the stuff. And anymore, the analytics of, Open Table, Yelp, our POS system, all these things. I can see how long now we have cameras, so somebody's like, my favorite is we waited 30 minutes for this. And I'm like, okay, I'll go check the cameras. I'm like, actually it was 14 minutes, but it seemed like 30 because you were sat late. You didn't get greeted in time. Your water ran low. So if we can mitigate some of these things by following the recipe, if we can mitigate some of these things by doing what we do well, then all the other stuff goes by the wayside. But think about it, all these things start to happen. Well, then you start to notice that the walls are dusty. And then you start to notice that the server's shoe's untied. Then you start to you start to notice these things when you're having a bad time. So if I can get you in the door, get you seated on time, get you a server that is engaged with you, talk about applied knowledge is power. If I can do all these things, follow the recipe, then you don't realize that I forgot to dust up there today. You don't realize that light bulb's out. You don't realize that this sort of stuff. But you start to have a bad time, everything becomes super hypercritical. And so that's one of the things that we talk about a lot of times. And that's why these are also important because, I can have a cleaning list every day that I have to check off. I have to come behind you and I've got to, did you sweep here? Oh, let me get my white glove out. Or if I can just give you what a lot of times we do an AOR, an area of responsibility. This is your area of responsibility. And I trust in you to keep this area up to par. And when it's not, or when we do get these complaints, then I can go back to whoever's responsibility that is and the area of responsibility. And I can say, what's up with that? I'm like, oh man, I forgot this. I forgot that. Like, do you want me to get the checklist out? They're like, no. I don't want the checklist. I'm like, okay, then don't let this happen again. And so I'm not a checklist boss, and some people enjoy it, but I'd rather give you an area of responsibility. I'd rather follow the recipe. I'd rather follow the points of passion. And so I don't have to micromanage you. I don't have to come by with a white glove and check this stuff, but don't make me, and so to be engaged, for me to be able to run through all that stuff is the tricks of the trade too. So
do all your team members get this 17 points on the first day?
It usually takes 2 days. I give them a 2-day open book, so they can. It's basically a 3-day training process.
3 days.
Third day.
Okay.
Third day, I ask for you to have them memorized.
Okay.
Yeah, and then on the hopefully on the 4th, I can get you on the floor. So
okay.
It takes. Some people get on day 1. The best ones are my high school students that I'm sure this is nothing to them, everything else they have to memorize. But I can't tell you how many times I've had a 16, 17-year-old hostess that's like, I got the points of passion, I got this, and then they're proud, and then I'm like, hey, I'll give you $100 to teach everybody else up here, and then they'll teach all their hostesses.
Oh, that's neat.
And then
I like it.
Then they're like, $100. I'm like, that's invaluable to me if you can train 3 of your other 16, 17-year-old hostesses to don't know what you know.
So they actually recite the 17 and give a little bit about what each one represents.
Yeah, more along the recite. I don't. That's there's quite a bit in there. For our management team, I'm a little more.
Right.
Little more, but if I can get some of my hourly first-time employees to really buy into it, and I can use that to show my seasoned employees too that, hey, this 17-year-old hostess knows them. 17-year-old hostess uses them.
A big thing we use in the marketing world is competitor analysis. We always encourage people to be checking out their competitor. But at the same time, you don't want to be too worried about your competitors because you got to focus on your brand and what you do, right? So you have these 17 points of passion. This is your system, your creed, your mission that you live by. But it's always... It is kind of good to know what's going on because sometimes through your competitors, you can see maybe some things that are going on in the industry that you may have missed. So for you have your brand, your way of doing things. You mentioned earlier about why you go to restaurants, of course, too. Yeah. Do you go to a restaurant? Are you able to go to a restaurant and just be a guest, or do you always have your Burgess Group hat on and you're always checking out things, learning things, and seeing what's going on?
I feel like I can go to restaurants and not be engaged too hard and criticize or but at the same time, I'm always seeing what I like and what I don't like. I was just listening to Sam Walton's book where he talks about I want you to go into the place and find 5 good things. I want you to find not only 5 bad things but 5 good things about the place. And so we just added caviar service at our Fortville location because I was out in Arizona and I was just blown away by how cool it was to have caviar service. I'm like, nobody around town is doing caviar service. And it's a lot of fun. It's coming into date night season. It's I'm coming into all these things where it's like imitation is the biggest form of flattery. Like, I didn't steal everything that they did, but I did a lot of the things that I'm like, man, just the way I felt when we did the caviar service. And it was pricey. It was a one-time thing, but it was fun. It was engaging, and I had fun with it. So I really try to take that hat off but I always have it on backwards, I guess you could say.
Yeah, that's one of the
incognito
occupational hazards. I think it is hard not to. Whatever you're in, not to see it. Like,
for sure.
Before being a part of Element 212, I didn't really pay attention to certain details. Then all of a sudden, you actually get into the branding and marketing world, and you pay attention to every billboard and you dissect every commercial, and you're like, this is good, this is bad. It's kind of funny. It's hard to get away from. So I was curious to know if you were able to go out to a restaurant and just enjoy your experience without putting your owner's hat on. And
I'm pretty good at it. My staff isn't. I come back all the time. Like, we went out to this restaurant, and oh my God, it took forever for this.
That's cool. That's good. I like that. That's good, though.
It's really funny to hear them talk to you. Like I told you, you don't like pet peeves. I do, but my pet peeve is crossing your arms. I just don't like when people cross their arms in a restaurant. I think it's the most closed off, We're here to give a service. We're here to give something. And what can I give you with my arms crossed? So it's one of those,
You see that people in restaurants doing this?
oh, all the time.
Do you?
But not in our restaurant.
Yeah, well, not yours. I knew that.
But anyways, it's one of those easy things that allows me to manage. It allows me to. It's super small, but I don't like it. I don't like the way it looks. I don't like, you know. And so you'll hear my servers be like, I was out at the BMV the other day where I was like, oh my God, I'm crossing my arms. You know, and I'm like, they started taking it into their personal lives too. And
I
that's
love
kind
it.
of what the points of passion do is I hope that you can take them into your personal life in some
That's
capacity.
awesome.
But it's just something super small. It allows me to manage it. It's an expectation, and I can manage an expectation. Hey guys, I don't want you to cross your arms. It's nothing, anything that anybody probably
Thinks
ever
about.
notices.
Yeah.
But like I said, when I go to a restaurant, the server's sitting there and my drink's empty, and he's sitting here like this. Like, I know he doesn't mean it, but I feel like this is the most closed off thing you can do. Now put your arms down
Well,
here behind you.
it's been proven scientifically
Absolutely.
that it does. I love how you shared that about your team members, because they're now, because they learned this, they're now recognizing things that they may not have recognized before.
Oh, yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's really cool. All right, moving on. I like this one. Locked on.
Yeah.
Locked on. Tell me what that is.
Kind of like I alluded to, I peeked over and I kind of got ahead of myself. But yeah, just being locked on. I want you to be very engaged with what you do.
Are you peeking?
Yeah.
Are you
So I want to be engaged with your guests, but I also want you to be engaged with what's going on around you. Whether it's pre-bussing a table or taking care of something, or hearing the table talk over like, yeah, it's her birthday today. Like, that might not be your table. You might not want you to know that, but if you can straight up with the manager, it'd be great for me to be able to come by and buy you a dessert or customize service. All these things. I feel like we're getting to the end of these where now they're really, really starting to talk together. Where being locked on is so important to what we do across the board. That it really allows us to excel at what we do and what we do well. If you're engaged and you're locked on, that is just something where you know everything about your guest's experience, and that's so valuable to what we do.
I love it. This is another one where I want to read from what you have written down here. Understand that the restaurant is a living, breathing, and ever-changing machine that we can only drive properly when locked on to every aspect. I like that a lot. That's awesome. Locked on. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Number 14. Good versus great. That's loaded. So that can mean all kinds of things.
Absolutely.
So for your points of passion, what does good versus great mean?
I always talk about the guest size, or talking to guests, table visits. Manager wants to go to it, or server comes back. How is everything tonight? And they give you the look and say it's good. It's good.
It's fine.
Yeah, it's fine. Oh, it's fine. It's good. Okay, well, what can I do to make it great? That's a question I ask them a lot of times. Oh, no, it is great. It's great. Like,
but you didn't say that.
You didn't say that. Like, well, I meant it. So, we've been trained so many times that how is everything tonight? Oh, it's good. Like, we don't think that the progress or the procession that it took to get this on your plate took probably 2 days. It took me 2 days to put whatever you're eating on your in front of you. This goes back to follow the recipe. All these things where, the good versus great part is we want it to be great. We're buying great ingredients. We've got the greatest staff. We've got the great. Everything's great. We want to be great. And it's okay to be good, but good versus great. Let's be great. Let's do it, man. Like, let's be excited about what we do and how we do it. Let's go that extra step. Let's have that integrity. Let's do these things where good versus great just allows us to kind of separate ourselves in an industry that's so flooded with mediocrity and similarity where. There's 1,000 Fox Gardens out there. What makes us different? Hopefully it's being great versus good.
I like that a lot, because I do believe when you do have a great experience, you almost can't help but say so.
Yeah.
Right? Have you ever noticed that? In your Usually when something really is great, we go, it was great. It was fantastic. Yeah. Oh my gosh, it was one of the best I've ever had.
I was at the bank the other day, and I told the lady, I said, and we just recently switched banks, and this teller at the bank, or this lady that works there, I haven't had a great experience there, but she's just been super helpful and engaging with me the whole time. And I met her boss, and she'd helped me with some stuff, and I just gave her a shout out, like, hey, I've had a really good experience with one of your team, and but you're right, you do tell, when you
can't help it.
When you feel great, you want to share.
You do want to share it.
And what they say is that if you have a bad experience, you tell 15 people. If you have a good experience, you tell 2 people. It's way easier to be like, oh, I had the worst whatever, blah 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 blah. So you get so much more engagement than I had a really good time over so and so. Oh, cool. Like, that's boring. I want to know, like, what happened. Like, was your hair on fire? Like, I want to know the bad parts. And so, and then like I said, you go on to social media or these platforms where people can tell the world about their whatever. Like, we're behind the 8 ball. We're one industry that, like I said, everybody's an expert, and we've got to figure out how to get in front of those issues, because we don't bat 1,000. We just don't. But what we do is is hopefully try to get ahead of it. So that's kind of where that plays.
I have an observation and then a question based off this good versus great. Number one, I was just thinking about, from all that we were discussing, obviously you see your guests as, like, you see that whole experience as a relationship, right? It seems like you have relationships with a lot of especially your loyal, repeat visitors. But I always equate it to, like, imagine if your girlfriend says, what do you think? How do you think our relationship's going? Yeah. That's fine. Yeah. That's good. That's good. Yeah. It's good. Yeah, it's good. It's good. It's good.
Right.
But what? It's just good. No, it's great. It's great. Yeah. Well, you didn't say it was great. Right. Now you're in real big trouble.
Yeah. Well, use the points of passion to really, follow the recipe on getting back to greatness, right?
That's right. I have a question for you. I've never had the opportunity to ask somebody in your spot. Because it never crosses my mind when I'm just talking. Because I've talked to other managers, from restaurants and things. So I'm one of those people where I do like to, like, when I have a good experience anywhere, I want to tell somebody, because I think it's important. The one question I've want to know about restaurants is, okay, so there's you, the owner, and then you have managers. Yeah. Now, it sounds like at part of the all of your restaurants, everyone seems to have the same level of care and passion. However, when I go to a restaurant, I get really excited. I can't help but tell someone. Yeah. Sometimes I'll ask for the manager, and sometimes I'll just tell the server. Yeah. The question I've always had, in your professional opinion, does the manager and the server really give a damn about how excited my experience was?
Oh, yeah. I mean,
I've always wondered, because I'll be like, oh, tell the chef. Right. The food was so good. And I wonder, does the server really go back and tell tell the chef?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's. I have so much pride when that happens. It makes me happy, and
so it does matter.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, managers too, and especially with what we talked about earlier, where I have nightly recaps and that sort of stuff. Like, there'll be, I get that all the time. Like, so and so did a great job tonight. Had a guest stop by and tell us they did this. And then online reviews, we try to share those. A new approach that we're doing is, when you name somebody by name, hey, I had a great time with Jake. Like, we'll take a picture of Jake and put Jake on Facebook and put your review there too. Like, that's hey, cool. Jake had I like that. Hey, we had a great time with Jake. So you make it more personal. You make it more important. Where you remember that guy's name, and that gets
you're validating that.
Yeah, and that goes back to our business cards. Not a lot of restaurants do business cards. Every server in my restaurants has a business card. So hopefully, and what they should say is hey, can we exchange business cards? Or here's my card. Next time you come in, be sure to ask for me. And
that's cool.
Like I said, it goes back to Tammy who texts her server, who texts her guests at night. So. Definitely. If you have a great time, tell somebody. Tell your host, tell your server, tell your manager. But what's really funny is sometimes people will be like, "Oh, we've never had this is the greatest time." And tip 5%. And it's like, well, that doesn't make up for your tip as well. So. That's the only thing. The trade secret is that somebody, they had such a good time and they gave me $4. Like, it doesn't sound like you had a good time. So. Servers that make $2.13 an hour is the best way that they do it is a 22+% tip. But excuse me, from our standpoint, the manager's standpoint, the owner's standpoint, I gotta love to hear it when somebody's like, dude, I had a great time. So keep that up.
Okay.
It definitely makes a difference.
It just struck me, just sort of as a side thought, something you said made me think about how, as we've been talking through this, and this might have been coming from the first part we did, the first 8, but it sounds like through these points of passion, you're creating this healthy accountability. It's like this natural accountability that you're not just responsible for. I think we talked about that in the first one. Everyone holds each other accountable, and then there's almost like this healthy competition.
Oh, it should be, yeah.
Yeah, I like it.
It should be. Like I said, if you're mundane, if you're just kind of going through the motions of your good versus great, these sort of things, like, you're going to get burnt out. You're going to get burnt out. It's just, in any industry, you're just going, God, I got to do this again. I got to do this again. It's like, let's keep it. Let's be engaging. Let's have some fun. Let's do that sort of stuff. So
I'm real excited about this next one. I'll share what it's called. But in our first interview, what I think I pointed out, because it really hit me, was when you have these points of passion, you can use those. You could point to the points of passion, right? Like, you don't have to even, you still want to train up, develop the individual, but the points of passion, you can just be like, right. Did you follow the point? So you could focus on the points of passion rather than necessarily, shining this light on this mistake that someone made. It's like, it's about the points of passion, Absolutely. Right? I love it. So I think that's what it's going to be about. Yeah. I just wanted to point out that we talked about this last time, and I love it. Be hard on the standard, not the person. Yeah. Be hard on the standard, not the person. But so I want to hear what when I saw that, I thought to myself, the standard are the points of passion, and you don't necessarily have to get really hard on that individual. Just remind them, this is how we do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So tell me if that's
a great take on it. I think that is definitely a part of it. But this is one that a lot of people pick, and they want to say, "Oh no, I was just hard on the standard. I wasn't mad at you. I wasn't this. I was just saying this." But it's like, no. This is the one that you really have to encompass everything else, because it's real easy to be a jerk. I'd say, hey, you didn't do that. Well, I didn't. No, here's a standard. Like, no. Like, we have to be fully encompassed on everything else to be able to use this one. You talked about having a friendly competition. You talked a little bit about. Those sort of things. Like, that's absolutely what this means, is that, you can't just, can't make a mistake and then call somebody out because they didn't do it the right way and say, oh, no, I'm just being hard on the standard. Like, you've got to be integrity. You got to have that integrity. You've got to have that leadership motivation, that sort of stuff, and hold yourself accountable in a lot of these instances to be able to be hard on the standard and on the person. This also goes back to something that I've really been trying to work on is managing expectations. Here's my expectation. And I'm just managing that. I want to get food cost at 32%. I want to get food cost at 31%. I want to get food cost down a little bit, and we're not doing it. Well, then I'm going to manage that. I'm not managing you. I'll give you tools. I'll give you access. I'll give you ways to cut these costs and this sort of stuff. But I'm just managing that system. And so I think it goes a little bit two ways, where it really takes the emotion out of it. Where, I like that, where it's really easy to micromanage people. It's really easy to kind of, like you said, I'm just managing the system. I'm managing the standard. Well, you kind of are, but you're kind of missing the other things. I'm following the recipe. I'm doing what you want to do, and I just can't get this one thing right. And so sometimes it takes more coaching and more guidance and more whatever. But it's definitely one that's real easy to remember. It's definitely one that's real easy to do, but it's the hardest one to make sense, because you've really got to be engaged on the other ones. But once people are bought into the rest of the stuff, you really start to see them hold each other accountable. And the accountability part, I think, is really what that boils down to. But what I think, like I said, what it kind of means for me is it allows me as a manager, as an owner, or as a leader, or whatever, to set expectations. Then I manage those expectations, where it takes the emotion, it takes the personal side out of it. I might have known you for 20 years, and we work together, and it's hard for me to manage you. Like, buddy, I'm not managing you. I'm just here's where it's coming down from.
It's all about the behavior. Absolutely. It's the behavior.
Yeah, absolutely. Or and I tell my managers and stuff too. I'm like, if it's hard for you to get that point across, like, sometimes I have tasks for them to do. Like I said, cutting labor, or cutting food cost, or cleanliness, or whatever that is. And I tell them, make me the bad guy, Jake wants this done, Jake wants this done, or Jake needs this done, or whatever that is. And so let's figure out a way to get it done. And it allows them to manage, everyone kind of deal, where here's our goal, here's our task at hand. I'll kind of give an example where, we've got some seasoned vets, some people that have been in the industry for a long time. Some people have been in the industry probably longer than I've been alive that work for us. They have bad habits and they have these sort of things. Well, they're the starlight of the restaurant. Somebody's been in the industry for 25, 30 years and somebody's been in the industry for 5 or 6 years. They're probably going to look up to the person that is at the top of the schedule or top of the list or top of the pecking order. And, oh, well, so-and-so can get away with it. So-and-so can get away with it. Well, then they start to develop bad habits, the younger crew. So, I've had to have some really hard conversations with some tenured employees of asking them to, hey, man, it's really hard. It's hard for me to manage you because I like you so much, and it's hard for me to manage you because you're so good at your job. But your 1% less new standards are really shining through. You're really, you're not showing up on time now, and you're not doing this, and you're not following the recipe. You're not doing this. Well, you know what? The new guys is now picking up those habits. So, so if I can kind of jerk the change, redirect the direction of them, well, then it allows me to manage the rest of the people way easier too. Where I'm saying, Johnny's been here for, since we opened, and Johnny did this. Well, Johnny, when's the last time Johnny did that? And so it doesn't, so I try not to manage manage in private and award in public, or, however that says. So just because I manage you one way doesn't mean I'm not managing this other person. So, we are so around each other so much, if you're a cook and I'm a server, and more than likely you come in at the same time or near the same time, and we got to work 6, 7, 8 hours together sometimes, and you have a bad habit, well, I'm probably not going to, in front of everybody, talk about your bad habit. I'm probably going to pull you aside and say, hey, we got to fix this. We got to change this. I need you to come in on time. I need you to do this sort of stuff. Well, the other person that started picking those bad habits, when I start to manage them, they want to say, well, Johnny does it. Well, when's the last time you saw Johnny do that? You haven't seen that in a couple weeks, have you? No, I haven't. Yeah. So, Johnny hasn't done that in 2 weeks. I need you to start showing up on time. I need you to start doing this, and so it allows us to, have those allies within our business to say, you're going to help me grow the team, develop the team. You're going to help me manage the team just by doing this one little thing, and so, in any industry, and I'm sure yours or mine or whatever, but I give a lot of people inches. Like, take the inch. If I'm giving you an inch, take that inch. Don't take the foot. Don't take the foot. Don't make me the bad guy when I've got to come back to you. You've worked so hard and you've earned this. Enjoy it, but don't take the extra foot. I've given you that inch. So, but it allows me to take some of these tenured employees or these talented people that have, either gotten complacent, tired, mad, angry, sad, whatever you want to call it, and kind of ask them, like, was this where you want to be? Okay, well, then I want to need you to do a couple things. And then it allows me to manage other people appropriately, differently, whatever you want to call it, because, like I said, we don't bet 1,000. You're going to have a bad day. You're not going to want to come to work sometimes. It happens everywhere.
Yeah,
but you're forward facing. You're very visible for not having a good day. You're very visible for having a bad day. You're very visible to have a bad attitude. Let's see if we can mitigate some of those bad days. And if you have a bad day every once in a while, let me give you a section that you're not going to see a lot of people. Let me give you a section where you can kind of stay out of the limelight. I need you here. You need to make money, but you're having a bad day. I get it. I have bad days, So having those kind of in our back pocket of managing some of the more talented or more tenured or more whatever people, it allows you to kind of manage the people that want to grow.
That's awesome. All right. We're getting to the end. We're on 16 of 17. Next one, think like an owner. Think like an owner.
Think like an owner. I think if you go back to our first one, I talked about how I interviewed a lady, and all she said was like, "Does the water always leak in the restaurant?" Like it seems like you talk about water leaking all the time. It's kind of what it goes back to. Think like an owner is the water. I've added automatic switches to every room in our restaurants. Because it's really easy to walk out and leave the light on or the water dripping or whatever you want to call it. I feel like this one kind of pertains to your mom growing up, where it's like, I'm not heating the whole neighborhood, where it's like, close the door, turn the lights off, save those pennies, nickels, and dimes. But at the same time, think about a server's or a guest experience, or even your teammates. Think about your teammates.
This ties back to the pennies, nickels, and dimes a little bit, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. I like it.
Excuse me. But, this one is just like, think like an owner, How can you save money? How can you create experiences? How can you be creative? How can you, generate more revenue? How can you save costs? Those are the two things that I feel like, fall under my job description, is generating revenue and cutting costs. Now, there's 1,000 other things that go into it, but if you can, think of those two things, that's a really good way to think like an owner. And then at the other time is like bringing people along with you. This is make your boss's agenda your agenda. If you've heard that or whatever. But I'm the one who's going to give you a raise. I'm the one who's going to make your schedule. I'm the one who's going to give you a promotion. Like, think like an owner. Make your boss's agenda your agenda. If I want you to do something, but your teammate who is at an equal does it this way, and I want you both to do it one way, just do it the way I want. Believe me, you're going to get way more results out of what I want than what your teammate does or how they want it. So make your boss's agenda your agenda, and think like an owner. Like, you're going to be way more successful if you do what I want as opposed to someone. So I worked for a chef one time who'd come back, and he'd change something every week. It'd be the same thing. Hey, I want the salads this way. Okay, I'd do it that way. He'd come back the next week. Why are you doing it that way? No, I don't know. He's like, well, let's do it this way. Okay, let's do it that way.
Every week?
I mean, it was the same. It was the same thing, and he just forgot what he had wanted, on whatever that was.
I got you. I got you.
Why are you turning the wrench this way? I'll turn it that way. Okay, I'll turn it that way. However that is. And it was just like, I would just say, show me how you want it done. Why don't you show me how you want it done? And I did that to him 10 times. But every time he was like, that's how we want it. I'm like, you got it. Like, you're my boss. You tell me how you want it. I'll make it happen. Like, you might not remember. You might not be as engaged as I am because I'm here every day, and you're only here once a month or whatever that was. But every time he came in, he wanted something done. Yes, sir. You got it. With a smile on my face. And you know what? I ended up taking his job eventually. I ended up growing from there. But it was one of those things where he's the one who was he was the one who was paying me, He wanted this way. You wanted this way this week? There you go. You got it. So that's kind of how, in that role that I was an hourly employee, or I was in a position, like, he was the one who was giving me money. He was the one who gave me a raise. He was the one who giving me write my schedule. You got it, man. However you want it. And so it took the humility. I had to keep my mouth shut because I'm not a guy who'd be like, dude, last week you wanted it this way. I've been that guy before, but that was the time that I was like, you got it. You just show me how you want it.
How old were you?
I was 22, 23.
22. Okay. Does think like an owner, does that eliminate that whole thing of that's not my job, that's not my responsibility a little bit?
I don't know. I don't think that, and I guess maybe not think like maybe the owner, maybe sometimes you work for a guy who wouldn't do that, but there's not many things in my industry or my restaurant that I won't do, so they've seen me in knee deep in mud, and they've seen me fly on the line, they've seen me hosting, they've seen me bartend, they've seen me do everything. So and I don't
mean literally, but remember, I think earlier you talked about if someone sees a piece of garbage on the floor, regardless of what your job description is, just pick it up. Yeah. It's whatever's in the best interest of the restaurant, the team, the experience. Just think like an owner. Yeah. Pick it up. Yeah. Do that or whatever it is. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I think that, like I said, think like the owner might be a better way to say that. But no, and these don't always resonate with everybody. A lot of times this is for people that want growth, that want that community, that want this sort of stuff. Some people run the points of passion because they have to. Some people that really buy into it, some people that really get it. I was talking to somebody the other day. She's like, I use the points of passion at my new job, and it's not even the same industry, And so you can, she's like, I hate that I do this. She's like, but I use them all the time, But they almost, you almost push back on it until you really lean into it, where you're like, okay, I go to these points of passion. Well, then it's way easier to manage situations or systems or people when you can just go back and be like, I'm just going to follow the recipe. I'm just going to think like an owner. I'm going to do this. And so it takes the emotion side out of it and be like, this might be a hard conversation I have to have, but you know what? It needs to be had, And so, you can pick and choose. You can't really pick and choose. You really need to buy into all of them. But they pay dividends throughout your career. You can take these to anywhere you go, and you can sound like you know what you're doing.
Okay. Let me share this because I just want to make sure. I got excited about what I like that phrase. Think like an owner. And I had questions, and I was kind of on the right track, but not really. Yeah. So I want to make sure I don't ruin the momentum you were trying to gain.
They're interpretive. You feel this way.
Yeah. So let me read. This is another one I want to read, how you describe this. When organizations are filled with leaders and team members who think and act like owners, work is more meaningful, rewarding, and enjoyable. So it's kind of like an attitude. Accept personal responsibility for keeping costs low, innovation high, and profits growing. It's great to have a team full of leaders. So think like an owner, think like a leader. Yeah. It sounds like, as I read that, you're all vested. Yeah. You're all thinking big picture. Yeah. You're taking into account the consequences of your actions. I think that's kind of...
That goes great for an hourly employee too. Maybe think like a manager even. You don't always have to think like an owner, I guess. But I remember when I was 22, 23 years old, and I was like, I don't want to be a line cook my whole life. I remember having like an epiphany, like I'm really good at this job, but I don't want to be here this whole time. And, I was like, what do I do? What do I do? What do I do? And I remember I just started doing my chef's job. I just started doing his job. Nothing that undercut him, nothing. I would just do some of his tasks. And I use this example a lot, and anybody who works for me has probably heard the story, but I just remember I didn't want to be an hourly employee anymore. And every night I would be kind of the last one there. Well, I just started doing a prep list. I was just doing, and that's what my chef would do. He would come in the morning and do a prep list, and it would probably take him 15, 20 minutes. It wasn't a big deal, but the last 10 or 15 minutes before I left or after I clocked out, I'd go work for free. I would just do a prep list. I'd leave a note, hey, here's what I think prep needs to look like tomorrow. Take it for what it is. See you tomorrow. I'd leave a little note for him. I'd come in. Well, then he started talking to me differently. Well, I think we need to do 16 quarts of soup. And I was like, and you only had 8 quarts of soup on there. Like, oh, yeah, that's a great idea. Or, I don't think, we've got eggs. Eggs are already back here, or the steak's already cut. Like, oh, great. Then he'd start to show me things like, oh, yeah, well, the steaks are down here, and I put them down here for this reason.
I love that.
And I start to do this, and I do this because of this. Well, he was giving me a free lesson that he didn't know, and I was helping him out, And
that was just from your proactive interest.
That was just me being like, I don't want to be here my whole life.
That's awesome.
And so what happened was like we formed a great relationship, and then he started to take me around, and he started giving me opportunities, and he started doing this sort of stuff. And it was simply because I was like, I'm so good at this one specific job of mine. I'm not very good at these other things. But by me just saying, hey, I'm going to do this for you, whatever that was, and it was a prep list for him. And he didn't ask me. I don't even think he ever said thank you. I don't think he knew what it was just one of those evolution things. But what it did for me was it really gave me a free lesson on how to do his job. Was he'd start to take me around and be like, well, I keep this meat here and I rotate it this way and we only prep this much. And I go up here and I ask so-and-so for how many reservations we have tonight. And then so next thing you know, I was asking, hey, well, how many reservations we got tonight? Then I could start to do this sort of stuff. And it really took me to the next level. And it was simply because I was so good at my job, and it was just a measly line cook job, but it catapulted me to executive chef. I skipped what a lot of people do is the progression in the restaurant was, line cook to lead line cook to sous chef to chef de cuisine to executive chef. And I bypassed all the steps.
Did you go from line cook
from line cook to executive chef?
Wow.
And it was because of all those things that I really kind of learned kind of on my own.
So you didn't need to go through the progression to prove and show that you could do
I built
these
relationship. You go back, I built relationships. I was thinking like a manager. I was doing all these things. And he was like, dude, I don't have to train this guy.
He knows it all. He knows it.
He already knows everything. And so, and I talk to a lot of schools and I talk to these things. And I always tell, students and that sort of stuff, like if you find a company that you like and you work really hard for them and you show value in what you do, they're going to take you, they're going to take you wherever you want to go, because you have talent, you have passion, you have this sort of stuff. Like when I find these people, I'm like, tell me what you want. Do you want to own a restaurant? You want to buy it? Like I will take you to where we go because I invest in the people and then they allow me to grow. So when I find those people, it's like, let's do it, buddy. And so it really kind of puts a smile on my face when I'm like, I don't have to train you. You already know the points of passion. You know my expectations. You know how I like to manage or see or that sort of stuff. And so I've got those people in my life that I've brought along and I've showed and I've shared and like I'll be an open book to you because somebody was an open book to me one time and it was super super valuable.
Okay. Well, I'm bummed out. We're at number 17.
Well, there's a hidden 18.
Is there a hidden one? Oh, okay. So unfortunately, we don't need to do a third interview.
Yeah, exactly.
I think two's enough.
Yeah, two's fine.
I think two's fine. I'm so glad we didn't do just one.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. This is great.
The amount of coffee.
I say that sincerely. Like I enjoy hearing you talk. I love the points of passion. And I love this stuff.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of bummed that we're at the end. So let's go to number 17. Then after we get through the 17th one, I do have some questions for you.
For sure.
That I think would help in terms of applying this to our listeners can apply this.
Yeah.
Okay, last one, number 17, the 17th point of passion. They weren't ready for us. They weren't ready for us. What is that?
They weren't ready for us.
What is that?
A lot of initially Fox Garden was, in Fortville. Fortville was a desolate town. When I opened, there were 11 storefronts that weren't rented.
Oh.
When
was this?
2015. So just 10 years ago. I mean, you could have played 7-on-7 football on a Friday night at 7:00. There was nothing in
Wow.
Bungies, you're out in the middle of nowhere. Fox Garden Family, you're in a strip center that had 2 failed restaurants in it. The Den is inside Sun King Spirits. There's 3 other options there. Smokies in the small town of Lapel. There's nothing in this town. But by the time they leave that place, I want to be like, holy smokes, oh my God, that was a blast. I can't believe I want people to find ownership in it. Hey, I found this spot out in Fortville. Hey, I found this spot out in Lapel. I found this, they weren't ready for us, and I talk about it where a lot of my restaurants are out in the middle of nowhere. We talk about it where I say, you've passed 30 restaurants to get to us. If you live,
was that by design?
Yes, there's some, our model and how we do restaurants is, but, you come to Fortville and you have the greatest steak you ever had. I get that comment all the time. That's the best steak I've ever had. And I get that 100 times a year. But you know what? They weren't ready for it. They didn't know they were going to have it. So they're walking out of there going, holy smokes, I just had eaten this little place in Fortville. I had the best steak I've ever had. They weren't ready for us. If we've done everything that we've done, if we have followed the recipe, if we've been, integrity, hard on the standard, every table, every time, if we do all of these things, then those people, our guests that walk out are going, wow, I can't believe I did this. I found this. I did this. And you know what? They get on the phone. They tell their friends. They do all this sort of stuff. So, they were locked on, all this stuff. They weren't ready for us. And so we really hang our hat on that. And it's fun to see our managers really get behind that. Hey, how can we enhance your experience? How can we do this? How can we, by the time you leave one of our restaurants that you're like, man, that was so awesome. Good versus great. You know, they all go into play, but they weren't ready for us is one that really puts a smile on their face. Kind of like you said earlier, where does anybody care that we say good job? Does anybody care that I had a good time? Does anybody? Yeah, we absolutely care. I mean, it's our passion. It's our point. It's what we do this for. They weren't ready for us, and it's one that we really hang our hat on. And Bunge's is a great example where, you know, there's no advertising, there's no billboard,
They never have.
No, there's no billboard. There's no nothing. There's, you know, you're in the middle of nowhere. There's a church and us and one stop sign in this whole town, you know, and you go there and you walk in and you have the greatest pork you've ever had. You have the greatest pasta you've ever had.
So
they weren't ready for us. You drove all the way out here thinking, oh, I'm going to have a good time in this fun little spot in the middle of nowhere on the river that's 171-year-old building, and you have the greatest something. Yeah, they weren't ready for us.
So if you go from church service to Bunge's, you can say you went from church to heaven?
Yeah, exactly.
Is that right?
Yeah,
right. Okay.
But no, it's something that all these go into play that allow us to really hang our hat on something, be proud of what we do.
Great.
Is when somebody's excited to be there. You know, like I said, I get all the time, that's the best steak I've ever had. I get all the time, that's, you know, I've never had a bad meal there. I get all the time, oh, we love so-and-so. Like, they weren't ready for us. And then it allows us to build relationships, allows us to have customized service, allows us to be locked on, allows us to be good versus great, allows us to do all these sort of things. And so that's not just buzzwords, kind of like you said earlier. It's not just these things. They really mean something to me, and they really mean something to our team. They really mean something to what we do. And you know, like I said, the thanks, it's a very thankless job a lot of times. It's, especially in the kitchen, you know, like, you know, when somebody comes back, like, and coming from the kitchen, not a lot of front of house or not very many owners really come from the kitchen, but anytime somebody tells me something about the food, I'm the first one to run back to the kitchen, like, dude, that guy just said it was the best fish he's ever had. That guy just said it was the best pasta he's ever had.
That keeps him motivated back there?
Well, I mean, I remember being back there. Being back there, and it's like, it's a thankless job, you know? You got servers that are making hundreds of dollars a day, and you're making dollars a day. You know, it's a very thankless job. So, you know, to have that from the back of house, you know, and then to have somebody be like, dude, that was the best something. You know, for a long time, we had to buy the round of kitchen. It was a round of Strohs, and it was like $8, and you could buy a round of
Strohs?
Strohs.
Oh my God!
Because we're dirty cooks in the back. But we had a thing, and you know, there was a night where we had like 14 rounds. You know, somebody had bought 14 different tables. We're like, buy the kitchen around to Stroh's, you know, and that was really, we had done such a good night that everybody had just that was their gratitude to us. Was now I didn't get them 14 rounds of Stroh's because
right, that'd be hard to get work done.
But I definitely
get them home.
Definitely rewarded and took care of them on that.
That's pretty cool.
So you know, they weren't ready for us as such a, you know, that was one that I could really be in the last. I could really kind of pull all the others into because I didn't want to get ahead of myself. But just kind of talking about that allows you to see that on any one of these points of passion, you can really blend them all together.
That's what I was gonna point out, that how being on this side, what struck you made mention about how they all stand alone on their own merits, but they're all interchangeable.
Yeah.
But you also mentioned how they kind of build off one another. One of the things, like, it makes absolute sense that this one is number 17.
Yeah.
It wouldn't make sense that this is number 1.
Right.
Makes sense it's number 17. And then what's really cool is if you I don't know if you saw me doing this, but as we were going through the back 9.
Yeah.
As we were going through the back 9,
use that.
Yeah. I noticed that some of them had elements from the first 8.
Yeah, for sure.
And that makes sense.
Absolutely.
I love it. I absolutely love it. So that feeds into the whole thing, how this gains momentum. They feed off one another and whatnot. I love it.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you can talk about them interchangeably.
Yeah, you can. I'm just glad you didn't quiz me on these.
Well, not yet. You know,
no,
that's your third. You got 2 free ones on the third time.
Jeez, oh man.
I gave you the one. I got friends that, you know, I gave you the little sheet. We put it in our server books, but I've got friends that put it on their mirror in their bathroom, and you know, before they go to work or whatever. It's something to look at. You know, have it in your car, have it someplace where, you know, they're definitely able to, from a leadership standpoint, it really allows you to use them in everyday language, everyday conversations where, hey, here's my expectations. I want you to be locked on. I want you to good versus great. I want you to this sort of stuff. And then you start using these words on people around you, you really start to repeat what you're saying, but also understand where you're coming from. Okay.
So that leads me in. I have a few questions now. Number one, okay. So your first restaurant was 15 or 14?
2015. Yeah.
Okay. And when were these, as they are, these 17 points, when were these in place?
They were probably 14. It was kind of leading up.
Did you have these before you opened?
So, like I said, Troy and I, my partner, yeah.
That's
so
right.
him and I, we're really kind of. This was the baseline to.
Okay, that was the part I couldn't remember.
So, I came in guns a-blazing. I'd come in. I'd been a chef for a long time. I'd been in a position of managing. I've been in a position of, all that sort of stuff. And so, when I came in, it wasn't like I was just a spring chicken. I was a spring chicken, but I wasn't naive. I really had a focus on expectations. I had a focus on ideas of what we were doing, and I had a really good opening team. I had I've still got 4 people from my opening team that work there, and that's 10 years ago.
Oh, that's
and
really
the restaurant
cool.
was really hard to find. So.
That's really cool. Yeah. So this is not a story of my restaurants were all about to go out of business, and then I came up with these 17 points of passion.
I wish.
And boom.
I mean, I guess I don't wish, but yeah. No, this has kind of been our Bible. This has kind of been our understanding.
So you had these commandments in place first. I got you. Okay. All right. Well, this is what's really important. I didn't want to ask you a lot of questions. I was thinking about our listeners. So, again, in our industry, I pointed out to you it's okay. But you just mentioned about some people have these and they're maybe not in the restaurant business and they put them up there. So here's my two-part question. How can these, in your opinion, or maybe you've seen this, how can these be applied anywhere? Yeah. And that's what I'm hoping. I'm hoping that our listeners are going, wow, I might not be the owner of a restaurant. I might not be in the restaurant business, but I can see where something like this could be applied. So do you recommend that they replicate your 17 points? Can they be applied in other industries? And how do you recommend someone go about starting, like, let's say someone goes, man, I want to create my own points of passion. How do they apply them, and how do they even start their own?
Yeah, absolutely.
What do you recommend?
Yeah, I think that, you can take, and I recently just talked to a very, 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 probably the most successful restaurateur in the Midwest. I kind of called him up and just blindly said, hey, can we have a meeting? I'm growing. I'd like to have some conversations with you. And I brought these and I shared it with him. And he was like, wow, this is great. He goes, we have the same thing, but we have 5. And they have 5, what he called, a version of our points of passion. Okay. And I think that they're all known within his group. I don't think he is his Bible or his commandments as much as ours. But it's definitely the framework of what they do, and you can always kind of go back to them. So, he kind of even recommended, like, hey, you should break these down a little bit. And I'm like, yeah, but I mean, and even talking to you, I'm like, man, they all have value in what we do. So, pick and choose, pick a few, but make them visible, make them known. Have some humility talking about it, especially if you're in an existing business where you've had maybe some sheep run away, and, or you've had some cracks in the foundation. Sometimes that humility where you're having an all-staff meeting and you say, hey guys, I'm coming to you with some problems that we're having. I want to be very transparent with you, but I'm going to have to shake some things up. Our bottom line's changed. This has changed. Costs are going up. Costs are rising. Whatever your issues are, but have a little bit of humility, and then implement whatever that is. Whether it's the points of passion, whether it's expectations, whether it is systems, whatever that is. But say, hey, today's day one. And I've had that conversation a few times in 10 years where I've let the flock stray, or I've let some stuff go by the wayside, and I've had to kind of and I call it a State of the Union, where it's guys, like, I want you to be able to manage me. I want you to be able to hard on the standard on the person. If you're being hard on me, I'm okay with that. If it's for the standard way. But no, like I said, that humility really kind of comes into play if you're having those issues. If you're starting up, then yeah, definitely implement them. But you've got to really manage those. I think that coming from an hourly position or coming up through the ranks or whatever that is, like, I really hated being micromanaged. And I think that a lot of people don't enjoy being micromanaged.
I don't think anybody does.
And I don't think a lot of people really like to micromanage. I think they do, and it's really easy to micromanage because whether you've been in the industry or whether you've done it one way, like, not everybody does it your way. And that's something that took me a while to understand, is that You might not do it my way, but the way you do it isn't wrong. And I had to kind of understand that, to let people have that individuality. But yeah, so the micromanaging part, this really allows you to go away from that. So,
I love that. Yeah, I may have said this in our first interview, but all you have to do is this is not the way we do it here, or this is the way we do it here. And you can take that, instead of making it about that person and making them feel like they're under their microscope, you could just be like, it's all in the behavior. Yeah. It's all in the standard, and that speaks for itself. Right. And as I've been hearing you speak this whole time, all through the 17, it just makes me as an owner and as a leader, I'm like, the whole time. I mean, I'm listening to what you're saying, of course. Yeah. But there were moments through our conversations, first round and this one, where I'm like, I wonder if I could do this for, we have our mission statement, we have our values, we have our vision, but I feel like this is deeper than that. I feel like this is more than just a vision. Like I asked you, I think in the last interview, is this a creed? Is this a mission statement? Part of the answer is yes to both. Yeah. You can call it what you want, but I do feel this is more than a vision. Yeah. I do feel to a certain degree it's a mission statement, but it's more than that even. Yeah,
I think that it's just operate. I mean, it's how I try to operate, and like I said, professionally and personally. I can take a lot of these things and I catch myself, practice react. I tell myself that all the time, or all of these things where I'm just like, if I'd just done it that way, or it's upkeep at the house. It's it's whatever it is. Where with your kids or with your wife or girlfriend or whatever it is, if you can kind of implement these in some capacity, then it makes you more visible and more open with your team. And then, like I said, I've used these as an hourly employee, as a manager, and as an owner, and I try to share that with everybody. That the opportunities are endless. But the humility, like I said, sometimes if you're having issues with your business and having issues with the sort of thing, like I found that, putting everybody on the same page, like I said.
It's probably somewhere in here.
Yeah, where, like I said, it allows, I've had to come to some of my veteran employees and just ask them to say, hey, we're kind of getting away from stuff, guys. Help me out, and more than 95% of the time, they're like, yeah, I get it, dude. Yeah, you're right. And you see the benefits. It's not like I'm just asking you to do this because I'm asking you to do this. There's benefits and rewards and opportunity. It all makes sense. I'm not doing it because I'm a jerk. I'm not doing it because I'm a bad boss or manager. I'm doing it because if we do this, we can buy more product. If we do this, I can get you a better something. If we do this, the money, if we're saving money, and I want to put it back into the business, it's really easy to do that by either cutting costs or growing revenue. And those are the two ways I feel like you can necessarily do that. And so if we can cut costs or generate revenue, then you want to do something, like, let's do it, Well, you did it together, and then you see the fruits of your labor, and then you start to buy into it. Then you start to believe in it, or say it's a bonus, a yearly, monthly, hourly, weekly bonus, if I can put benchmarks in place and you see the fruits of your labor by buying into some of the points of passion, all the points of passion, then you really start to get those people to follow you more, better, deeper, longer, stronger.
Yeah, that's pretty good. Yeah. So you mentioned this one other guy had he had 5 and you had 17.
Yeah.
I doubt you went out and said, I'm going to have 17 points of passion. So how did you know when you weren't done, and how did you know you were done?
With the
17, how did you know that?
I think I had 20. We cut it down.
Oh, you cut it down?
Yeah, I was like, they were some, and these are kind of repetitive. Like I said, I can link a lot of them together, but I think some of them were more repetitive per se. The unwritten one that I don't talk about it, but no excuses. It's an opportunity for, kind of like you said earlier, like, how do you the integrity side or whatever, like, no excuses, like just pick it up, just pick up the trash, or just do it, or I don't know, I guess that you don't want to go to work, or just do it, and so maybe just do it, no excuses should be kind of a no excuses / just do it one. But no, I mean, like you said, how did you come up with 17? I mean, I think we could have kept going, and with him having 5, I think he could have kept going, and he's like, but this is our core values.
Okay.
Like I said, I feel like what you said earlier, where mission statement, creed, but at the same time, as an owner, as a leader, as a manager, this is just a framework to say, how do I go from a kid who didn't want to always be a line cook to be a chef. I mean, this is it. I mean, this allows you to do whatever you want. If you want to grow, this is it. You want to be a good leader, this is it. You want to, whatever you want to do, lean into it and share it. Be passionate about it.
If someone's listening to this, here's my last question.
Yeah.
So because our listeners might be thinking about this. So someone listening could be an owner. Someone listening could be just a leader and whatever title, manager. Yeah. Maybe it's someone that's not even any of those.
Yeah.
So do you see the creation of this? I know from you had a business partner, or someone who was going to become your business partner.
Yeah.
Do you think this is something that should be created by the owner or by the leadership team? Is this an exercise that you would encourage everyone from the top down to be a part of? I mean, what's your recommendation?
On the creation side?
Yeah, on the contribution side.
Yeah, I mean, I like I said, I'm very open. I talk about having all staff meetings. I talk about having, State of the Unions. Tomorrow I'm bringing our whole management team out to dinner. I'm taking our front of house staff out to Vegas for a conference, and I will always want input. I want to know like what you're seeing on boots on the ground stuff.
Okay.
I don't get as much, being an owner versus being a manager. I don't get to have as much fun anymore. Like I don't get to be in the restaurant all the time, where it's like a lot of times I'm in the way. It's like these guys have, my chef, my sous chefs, my manager, my assistant manager, my bar manager, all these people. Like, what? And then I'm there. What do you want me to do? You want me to run the floor? It's really hard for me to grow the way that we do, and then come in and cut their legs out, or come in underneath them and say, oh, I want it done this way. Like, it kind of takes the wind out of the sails. And so my role is simply, cutting costs and generating revenue. Those are the two things that I really need to focus on, and then implementing, expectations and manage expectations. So put goals and tasks at hand, but the day to day is where the fun stuff and the stuff where I cut my teeth and the stuff I'm really good at. I don't get a chance to do that much anymore. So these dinners and these team building experiences and these State of the Unions and these pre-shifts, this sort of stuff, like, I love to have these conversations. I like to see what's going on. It allows us to really implement either a new point of passion or, kind of whatever, where you're having the, they say Harley Davidson, they do all their big meetings on the production floor, and they would get all these ideas from the guys that were painting the bikes, or the guys that were putting together the bikes. They're like, hey, these bolts don't fit, or we have 17 different bolts on this bike. Like, why don't we just go to one universal? Well, you know what that did? They started to have those, save millions and millions and millions of dollars by having conversations on the floor. So that's what we're trying to do, and that's what this allows us to do. Hard on the center on the person is one that is very open, but with the right leader and the right person implementing these, they're all conversation starters, where you want to hear what's going on at all facets of your job, all facets of your career, all facets of your business. And so doing the Harley Davidson conversations, is a great opportunity to say, I do a lot of front of house. I do a front of house meeting every day. It's a 5, 7, 10-minute conversation. We do it at one table. Well, I was like, let's do it at this table. I'm like, whoa, let's do it over here. Everybody sit down. Everybody sat down. I was like, look around. And they're like, oh man, like that picture frame's crooked. There's dust up here. This is wrong. It was just them looking at it from a different perspective, and then we started doing them in the back of house, right on the line. I've got a Spanish crew that is, 70% a lot of restaurants. Well, start getting them engaged with conversations and expectations and what's going on for the night. If I have them back there and I'm like, hey, what's the dinner feature tonight? Well, now they're engaged with it. Now they're talking. Now it builds the camaraderie and the culture and the relationship. From front to back of house, and people that maybe not necessarily always talk all the time, or they don't agree, or from different lifestyles, or whatever it is. They're all one team, and so we can't do this without the other. And so to put it very forward facing and in their face, the people respond well, and for the most, the world is good people. You've got some jerks out there, some people that aren't, but for the majority, I mean, the world is full of good people. So, they care.
I said I didn't have any. I lied. I have one more question. You've done a couple questions. You've been invited to speak on these, have you not?
Yes.
Okay. So
how do you want to phrase it?
Yeah, I don't want you getting 100 calls to come in and speak.
Yeah.
But under what circumstances have you spoken to a group of people, and under what circumstances would you speak to a group of people? So let's just say there's someone listening going, I'd like to have this Jake Burgess guy come in, and I'd like to hear him share his 17 points of passions to my team. Tell me about when you've done that and when you would do that.
Yeah, I've done it a handful of times. I've done it with school corporations. I've done it with executive teams. I've done it with, hourly employees. I've done it kind of across the board. I've done it with a few restaurants. I've done it with manufacturing places. I'm, as you can tell, hopefully my passion shines through a little bit, but I'm passionate about it. I'm passionate about the points of passion. And it's I feel like I can talk about it. I feel like I can talk about it in depth. Across the board, and I can share my passion for what they mean to me and what my business means to me as well. And I think they kind of talk together, but they're also very separate too. My business doesn't exist without them, and they exist without my business. So I think that you can take them as you can take what you want out of it. And I took. I basically shaped my whole future by using them. And I know that I've got people that work with me, that have worked with me, and I've got people throughout that call me, or I see them out like, did I use these all the time? Or I haven't crossed my arms in 5 years, or I haven't done this. And it's like, it's great. It's great to see
That's hysterical.
Work, but it's true.
I haven't crossed my arms in 5 years.
It's funny. People are like, I will never cross my arms. And it's like, you
just ruined it for them.
Yeah. But it's like, but I like to see what they don't like either. And I try not to do the things that they don't like. So, I'm passionate about them. I can always chat with them. I'm sure you're going to give my information out. But they're part of who I am, and they're part of who we are as a business.
I like it. I would say you're passionate. You're passionate about the passion you have for the passions.
Yeah, there you go.
There you go. And just so you know, guys, he only charges $10,000 per speaking.
Yeah, per point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's really cool. Okay. Well, I don't have any more questions. Let's jump. Let's just ruin this whole thing let's just do the dad joke.
Okay.
I apologize. And listen,
Do I have to have one? I can't remember.
Yeah, I'm gonna ask you. No, you don't have to have one. I'm gonna ask you this one. This one is old school. We're talking second grade, for goodness sakes. I saw some other. I wanted to pick one restaurant focused, and
couldn't find it.
There just aren't that many good ones out there. They were cheesy. I mean, they just. I didn't like my menu of dad jokes, so I'm gonna use an oldie but goodie.
Yeah.
And if you guess it, it's okay.
Okay.
Did you hear about the restaurant on the moon? You've heard this one, right? Did you hear about the restaurant on the moon?
Let's hear it.
Great food, no atmosphere.
Ooh, I like that. I like that one.
That does not happen.
Yeah.
That does not happen where the 17 points of passion are applied. I can guarantee you that. Did you hear about the restaurant on the moon? Great food, no atmosphere.
I'm like you. I love dad jokes. And puns in high school. I entered a pun contest. I did $1,000 winner or something.
Really?
I didn't win. I entered a handful, 10 or so in this contest, but no pun intended.
It reminds me, I'm a really good speller.
We better leave this, right?
Yeah.
It's going to keep going, right? Let's just keep going back and forth on puns and dad jokes.
Well, I supposed to say this reminds me. It's so sad. I'm actually a really good speller. The English language is just ridiculous. But a true story. I remember. I don't know why I'm sharing, but I remember I was like a great speller, and I was in 6th grade. I was invited to this state spelling bee, and I thought for sure I was going to win. My first word was this word that was only 6 letters long, and I'd never heard of it before, and I butchered it. First round out. I'm like, oh, it was. I mean, I took so much pride. I'm like, I'm such a great speller. I'm going to kick butt. And then you go and you compete with other people, and you're like, oh, okay, maybe I'm not that good. It just made me. When you just shared that story, it made me think about my sixth grade, my short career in the spelling bee world.
I love it.
It was brutal. All right. So to learn more about you, though I think they've learned a lot about you through this. Just go to LinkedIn and look up. I don't think there are many Jake Burgesses out there.
Yeah,
I think
fewer in jail.
Yeah,
a couple are.
So look up Jake Burgess, Burgess. I think it'll be pretty easy to find you on there. I think on your profile it says something about the restaurant, the Burgess Restaurant Group. And again, I just want to plug again your restaurants, Fox Garden Kitchen and Ale in Fortville, Fox Garden Family Kitchen in Fishers, The Den by Fox Garden in Carmel, Smokey's Concession Stand in Lapel. Where is that in Lapel?
Right downtown. If you can't find it, you don't deserve to be there.
That's right. Right in the heart of downtown, right?
It's us, and that's about it. So,
yeah.
So you got Pax Verum there, too. I don't know if you've been to that brewery. It's really nice.
Okay. And then, of course, Bungies.
Yeah.
I always say bongies.
I think
it goes both ways, right?
It goes both ways.
I've heard bungies and bongies.
Yeah.
Bungies Tavern in Perkinsville.
Yep,
and like I said, for you guys out there, just in case you didn't catch that in the first round, Jake's going to make some small changes that will be impactful, but nothing that's going to, you're not necessarily going to go there. So, I mean, there are people that love bungies. They've been going there for a lot of years.
Yeah.
Don't worry.
Yeah.
He's not going to ruin it for you. It's all going to be okay.
Still come still to tailgate.
That's right. Right.
Just
Still
make a reservation first.
That's right. Well, Jake, thank you. I was so excited about doing this. When I saw the 17 points, I knew there was a lot to cover. So I immediately knew right off the bat, we have to make this a two-part. So thank you for sharing this stuff.
Absolutely.
Thanks for coming up twice.
Yeah.
Thanks for really, I mean, I could sense your energy.
Yeah.
Thanks for just really giving it your all and speaking as if the listeners, really wanted to learn from you.
Yeah.
And I think they will learn. And you've given me a lot to think about.
Good.
So
like I said, it's very industry wide. So
if anyone did want to reach out to you, if I may, someone may actually be. There might be one person out there that wants to meet you or wants to talk to you about this.
Yeah.
Are you open to that? And if so, what's the best way to reach out to you?
Yeah. Come grab a beer at the restaurant.
Okay.
I've got cards around there. I've got my email set up, but
okay.
Yeah, Fox Garden with an I, always kind of what people don't get, but just in case this thing gets spammed out, I'll let you reach out to Todd and then reach out to me personally if you guys want to do that. But
okay.
Or come to the restaurant. Like I said, come to the restaurant and check me out. I'm all over the place.
You're always there, right? You're in all your restaurants all the time.
I'm somewhere.
Yeah. Okay. All right. As always, to our listeners and our viewers, thank you so much. I really appreciate you tuning into this one. Check out some of our previous podcast interviews. And of course, we'll have some more coming soon. But again, be sure to listen to both of these. It's important to listen to part 1 and part 2 of this to really understand the big picture of how these points of passion, the meaning of them, how they're applied, the impact they can have, and I think you'll be better for it. But for all podcasts, you can find us on iHeart Podcast, Apple Podcast, Spotify, YouTube, and our website. And in the meantime, may you, your family, your team, your customers, and your communities be blessed. Thank you. Have a good day.